Hey, my name's Fernando. This is my Corso Major. We live a nomadic lifestyle. Right now, we're about 30 minutes south of the Grand Canyon in the Kaibab National Forest. This is a pretty remote area, so I'm going to show you how to set up a full camp. All right, so the very first thing that I do is arm myself. Some people don't believe in that sort of thing, but after living on the road for about a month and a half, I don't see how you could not arm yourself if you're living a sort of nomadic, outdoor, Wild West-esque style lifestyle. So normally I carry, my everyday carry is going to be this Taurus G3C, little compact 9mm, nothing too crazy. And for most scenarios that works really well. But when I'm out here, when I'm out in the wild, well, it's not common, but you may find yourself in a position where you have to deal with large animals. So I carry something a little bit heavier. This is a Smith & Wesson MMP 2.0, chambered in 10mm. I carry a buffalo bore 220 grain flat nose nickel plated round. So I keep that as my sidearm pretty much at all times. It's pretty easy, especially with these thigh holsters. I've seen a lot of the chest rigs. Some people keep them hidden or in their backpack. I kind of prefer, I do prefer this thigh setup. The Velcro strap's not my favorite, but I mean, it's not that big of a deal. And I prefer here on the thigh just because it's pretty easily accessible, right? Like, it's pretty easy access. I always run one in the chamber. So that's step one. Fortunately, it's pretty warm today, high 50s. But tonight it's going to get pretty cold, low 30s, high 20s. If it were any colder than that, I may set up a hot tent. But since it's not going to be in the mid to low 20s, I'm going to set up my normal tent, what I normally use. Up here I keep most of camp, a lot of the heavy stuff that's not too delicate. These roof cargo storages are pretty awesome. This is a medium-sized one. They have a longer one that extends out toward the front there, but this was all I needed, and I can fit quite a bit of stuff up here. So there's my hot tent. We won't be using that. I have a smaller three-person tent. This is nice and compact, still fits the both of us, but this is more for backpacking expeditions. Now, we've got the big tent back here. It's technically, I think, a 6 to 8 person tent, but I think it's more of a 4-person tent. Now, prior to any of that, I scouted the area a little bit, and one of the main things you want to look for is a nice flat surface. Sleeping on an incline or decline is very uncomfortable. That's going to mess with your sleep. It's going to mess with your energy on the days that you're out here, and it's just not a good time. So make sure you find as flat of a ground as you can. I don't know if you could fit 6 to 8 people in here. However, for Major and I, it works perfectly. Not the rainfly, but the footprint you have to buy separately. It's going to come with the stakes and guy lines, some poles, and then the tent itself with the rainfly. So it's a pretty massive tent, but it is easy to set up, so that's pretty cool. Really take your time on this part, but find the best piece of ground you can find and try to clear it as much as possible. You're gonna feel all these little sticks and rocks underneath you when you're in your tent. So the more you clear out in this stage, the more comfortable you're gonna be in your tent. Some people don't use footprints. I do. I like to use them for 2 reasons. One, even that thin layer of material is another layer between you and the cold ground. And then probably more importantly, it's another layer between your actual tent and anything on the ground that might damage it. So I should say, I'm not sponsored by any brand or company or anything like that. This is all just stuff that I use. And through my research I found works really well, and obviously through practical application I found works really well. So I'm going to show you how easy this tent is to set up. It's a pain to tear down. Maybe not tear down, but pack away. But to set up is super easy. And I mainly use this tent as opposed to the hot tent or the 3-person tent, just because it allows for maximum comfort. We're going to toss that right in the middle there. And we want to find the front door. I'm just going to open this up. It folds quite nice. It's got the main pole in the center, and it's got the 4 poles on the corners. So this is the front door. We're going to turn this around. So once you have the 4 corners folded out, just kick your way to the center and open up this center bar. Just extend that out until you hear a click. You'll hear that. You'll see this little red button pop up. Now that's locked in place. So now all you got to do is extend out the 4 corners here. We've stayed in the desert where the winds are pretty high and unchecked by the trees or the hills or anything, and it's held up pretty well. It's not the most expensive tent, but it's also not the cheapest. I think it was like $300-400, and then the footprint was probably another $100, so keep that in mind. All I do here, now that the tent is fully extended and the footprint is down, I use the same stake to hold the tent in place on the 4 corners. So the rainfly can be a little more annoying to put on, but you'll get the hang of it. We're just going to wrap this up and toss that over, and then we'll unfold it from there. Now again, this part's not a necessity, but it helps with wind noise, and it helps keep some of that draft down as well. We're going to open up this main door here on the rainfly, and we're going to set up the tarp poles. Now I'll show you how to pop these up. Just stake down to the ground, so that's got some tension on it already. And there's a little hook here. Now there's a second piece to the rainfly that extends it out, or you can use it as like a flap. I don't typically use it. I find it kind of gets in the way, but it's nice to have. So we've got our stake down here, we've got the guy line, and we're just going to tie a simple hitch knot. Now we're going to put the open end. What I mean by open end is the side that ends, and this is the side that connects down to the guy line, or that connects down to the stake. And we're going to go over once through that loop, over twice through that loop, and we're going to come down, come straight down, and then through that bottom loop. That's all you got to do. Tighten that. You see that? That right there allows you to tighten. And that's pretty much it. You set up the 4 stakes and 4 guy lines. You want them coming off the poles at about a 90 degree angle. Don't keep the poles too tight, or don't keep the tension too tight on the poles. Give us a slight amount of give. You don't want to put that much tension, that much stress on the poles there. The last thing we're going to do here on the outside is we're going to stake the rainfly down all the way around. You don't have to do this, and if you are in like rocky terrain, you can get away with not doing this, but this does help with wind noise. At night, all this is going to be flapping around, and it gets kind of annoying. All right, so naturally we move on to the inside of the tent. And the first thing we're going to do is put down these blankets. For 2 main reasons. One, for insulation off the ground, some padding, comfort obviously, and then another important reason is that so Major's claws aren't scraping away at the bottom of the tent. With the blankets down in here, you can mitigate some of the harshness of the ground. Not all of it, but a good bit. So you got some padding, you got some insulation off the cold ground, just some general comfort, and keeps Major off of the actual tarp, or actually off the actual tent. So now I'm going to set up Major's sleep system. He's got this sleeping mat. I double this up underneath the blankets, and then I double up this wool blanket for him. All right, so as you can see here, For one person and a dog, this tent is more than spacious enough. So pretty cool. 2 people, definitely. 3 and 4, you know, you're gonna be pushing it. But for one person and a dog, yeah, this is perfect. So on the outside here, we've got the windows on the rainfly. We're gonna roll those up and leave the windows cracked a little bit. We wanna retain as much warm air in here as possible, but not at the cost of building up moisture in here. So we want a little bit of a draft. Now, here I've got a memory foam mattress. I think it's like 3 inches memory foam mattress. The last layer that I put here is a wool blanket of my own. Got one for Major and I got one for me. The way I use this is I use it as another layer underneath me. I'll set up this sleeping bag here. We've got quite a bit of time before we actually go to sleep, so I'm gonna let that air out. So Major's already laid down over there. He's very comfortable in that spot. The rainfly has windows on the side that we roll up, and then the inside has windows. If you keep a little bit of airflow going through the tent, that's going to mitigate any moisture buildup on the inside, which is huge. You don't want the walls to have those little droplets coming down, and then your sleeping bag might get wet, or the Major might get wet, the blankets, etc. So if you have a little bit of airflow, you can mitigate a lot of that moisture, but you can still retain some heat in there. And it might only help 1 or 2 degrees, right? It might be 28 outside, but that 1 or 2 degrees puts us at 30 degrees, which then allows the rest of the sleep system to bump you up to a real comfortable place. So the very next thing we're going to set up is what I just call a cooking area, or the kitchen. I've got these 2 foldable tables. I've got that stool there, and then I've got a portable wood stove. I can use it with a hot tent, but right now I don't need to use it in the hot tent, so I'll just have it out here, and I'll use it to cook, and I'll use it to keep warm if necessary. Moved over a little bit just to get out from under this little bit of canopy here, and to show you probably one of my favorite pieces of gear. Again, I'm not sponsored by anybody, I'm just showing you what I use. This is the Gonex portable wood stove. You can get it on Amazon for like 180 bucks, something like that. Works great with the hot tent, great for cooking, great for keeping contained fires, very low key. I've also tested, like, if you care about this sort of thing, the light profile. When enclosed, when all closed, even if you have a roaring fire in there, you're really only going to get a little bit of light out of that window there. And you can really only see it if you are looking directly at that light. If you're on the opposite side, you really can't see it. If you're on any other side, you can't see it. Unless you're directly looking at the window, it doesn't really give off that much light. Not too heavy. It's got a little weight on it, but nothing crazy. We're gonna fold out these legs. Put the legs first. You got these little side grates, which you can use as either a handle, or you can kind of use them as a grill. Yeah, you can kind of use them as a grill there. I don't know if I would use them as a grill just because this would get all nasty. But you can set stuff on the side here like bread or your fucking socks or whatever to dry them off, so that's pretty cool. Inside you're gonna get 6 pieces of this metal chimney, this pipe here. You got the dampener here, and then you've got these other pieces. There's the top. I don't know how I feel about this design because you get a lot of soot caught up in these little holes here. But you can buy different pieces. You can buy some that are curved, which are really good for hot tents because then you can direct the sparks away from your tent. But anyway, it comes with gloves. I've already melted one of them. This one's pretty much already melted. And then you got this little poker here, latch here, intake, and then down here, I'll take off this little handle, but this is an ashtray pretty much. Now, this little extra piece right here goes on the outside. Goes on the outside of that bolt there, so that it gives you some separation from this plastic piece and the metal here. Got this grate here. Mine's already a little bent. I've dropped it once or twice, and I've obviously put a lot of hot fires through here, so it'll bend a little bit, but nothing crazy. You can bend it back with some pliers, I'm sure. Now, I think you're supposed to put the first one like this, but that's no good because this gets really hot, obviously. So it's actually much more practical to put it, you know, layered one up, and then put all these pieces together here. Now, like I said, poker, glove, a couple pieces here. Oh, and then very important note, be very careful if you use this with a hot tent. If these get covered with soot, you are not going to get you're not going to get proper airflow. That smoke's going to come back down and out through here. Very dangerous. Happened to me once. Figured it out real quick. So then you got the little lid here. Fits on there quite nice. This obviously gets very hot. And so you've got this little second lid here. You can cook on that or you can feed sticks. I typically cook right over the open flame here and feed my sticks and logs through here. But when you're using it in the hot tent, this works really well. I'll show that in another video, I'm sure. But yeah, this works really well. As long as you have proper airflow, you got smoke coming out of the top, and you got a lot of heat coming off of here. So one more somewhat important aspect of camp life here. And obviously if you have a really cool rig or an RV or whatever, this is different for you. But I configure this from travel configuration, having everything packed and secured. I configure this to a camp configuration. Things are going to be a lot more easily accessible. So once I pop this jerry can back here, these are 20-liter jerry cans, maybe a little bit more if you fill it all the way to the top. I've calculated out, and have now obviously been doing so for a while. I've measured out that we consume about 10 liters a day. 3 drinking for me, 3 drinking for Major, and then I've got the other 4, 2 for cleaning in the morning, 2 for cleaning at night. This is biodegradable soap. And I just use that little basin to wash my hands. Very important even out here that you wash your hands. You know how many people died throughout history just because they didn't know to wash their hands? So it gets cold and dark very fast. So yeah, I like to be in my tent by this point, but I'm going to show you here. The rainfly here is pretty thick. And I know it's going to get really cold tonight, so I am going to close it down except for the windows. But I want to show you kind of how stealthy you can be with this tent. As you can see, I've got a lantern up top. The windows are open on the rainfly, but if I close them, they're exactly like that. They're exactly like the front door that I closed there. So you're not really giving off a whole lot of light. Very stealthy. So that's something that I do like about this tent. Now it's cold, so I have to close the front down so we don't lose too much heat. But that's not my favorite, just because, you know, you gotta open, you can't see out the front, and if you need to get out, you gotta unzip it and do this a little bit. I'll pop in here. Major's already getting comfortable. Things are looking good in here, so. So one of the worst things you can do is have poor nights of sleep. So this setup here might still be a little chilly at night, depending on how cold it gets. I think last night it got down to 22, or feels like 22. But this, for the most part, I felt a little chilly, but okay. And then reaching over and feeling Major, he felt pretty warm as well. But it's like a multi-layered system. I already described the whole tent setup and the blankets and all this. But I also I pretty much never take off this this Merino Tech base layer. This Merino Tech wool base layer. I always wear that underneath. This is the midweight. They have got a lightweight, a midweight, and a heavyweight. The midweight does pretty well for most scenarios. The lightweight might underperform a little bit, and the heavyweight might cause you to sweat, which is also not a good thing. It's 10:36. When it's this cold, I'll typically stay in bed until at least 9 or 10, because then the sun's up, starts warming things up. It's probably in the 40s outside right now. That's way better than stepping outside in the fucking 20 degrees, 30 degree weather. You think you don't want to get out of bed in the morning? Shit. Let me tell you. Round of wood collection is just all the simple stuff. Or not the simple stuff, but the small stuff. Little twigs, little branches. This is important on the first stage of the fire. Collect a nice bundle of that, and then we move on to collecting branches and logs. So I've got this Agawa handsaw, little hatchet, leather sheath. I might replace this hatchet. It does okay. It's a little dull. I got to sharpen it, but I might replace that, and then just some paracord here. So I'm gonna go find a couple branches, and then I'll be right back. You just want to find some branches like this and this here. Again, not too dead, not too brittle, so they don't fall apart on you. I'm gonna chop them up, chop off the little branches, and then we'll tie them together. So that took about an hour to put together. A couple branches here, a log, bury them down. But this gives me a nice little wood processing area. Show you here. Little sacrificial base. There we go. We'll chop that up a little bit more. There we go. And then I could continue chopping that, or we want to chop these down to no more than about a length of a forearm. We can take branches, toss them over there. Once I've got enough fuel, branches and logs and such, I move on to cooking. To start the fire, I've got these pieces of egg carton cardboard. I dip them in the fat from the beef that I make at the beginning of the week, and I use that as a fire starter. So that's pretty helpful. I've got lighters and flint and steel in here. But yeah, today takes a little longer because I have to cook that beef for the week. I make 6 pounds of ground beef for Major and I to share throughout the week. We eat a lot of beef, a lot of eggs. Got to eat a lot of protein, a lot of fat, stay healthy, a lot of calories. So like I was saying, these are just pieces of egg carton dipped in beef fat. I keep them in these mason jars. You can make a bunch of them, and they burn really well. You see here, I'll leave this open so we get good airflow here. But you just light up one side here. So now you just let that burn, and that gives you a perfect opportunity to start stacking on these little twigs, start getting the fire going. See, so nice and easy, very easy, convenient, and very helpful in wet conditions. So now we just start stacking on these sticks and start building up to larger sticks and branches, and we got a fire going. Now, like I said at the start of the week, chores like this were a little heavier on the chore side of things, just because I've got to set up camp, I've got to set up the wood processing area, I've got to break down the initial wood, process the initial wood, and then I've got to cook all this beef, which takes maybe 45 minutes to an hour, and then I've got to cook, first meal of the day after that, and so on and so on. So it takes a little while, but when you get into the rhythm, when you're in a new campsite and you're in the rhythm, you just wake up, refill your water, process wood, and cook. And so that makes things a lot easier. And that's pretty much all there is to it. Got a fire going. We'll throw that pan on, let that heat up, and we'll get to cooking. Right, so that's why we spend a little more time processing the wood down, so logs and branches and stuff fit in the stove right. So having a good diet, beef, eggs, you know, whole foods, whatever, good. But you're going to want to be more careful around these times, around feeding times, especially at dawn and dusk, especially in predator-rich environments. That's why we always stay strapped. So, you know, keep that in mind. Yeah, we're not, we don't eat granola out here. We eat good. We're going to take the beef we've cooked up so far. Make sure it's not too hot. But we're going to drain that fat. I'm going to drain that fat over here. Now we can take the cleaned up beef. And it's still got some fat in there, so you're not going to get it all off, but that's okay. And here, just to show you before I do the rest of these, you can just take that animal fat, or take that beef fat, soak your cardboard in it, and then once that dries off, it makes a great fire starter. Take that beef, take that cardboard and beef fat, and then you just stuff them in here. And there you go. Endless fire starters, essentially. Well, that's pretty much it. It's not a bare bones camp, right? It's not bare minimum, and it's not quite a full, all right, I live here now camp. But this does pretty well for a full nomad camp. We can stay here as long as our resources allow. A couple of functional areas. We cover food, water, shelter, and then some necessities for major, same thing, food, water, shelter. And we're good to go. So, yeah, that does it. We'll be here for a few days before we move on. That'll do it. So, see you soon.